Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy, and welcome back to part 2 of the lowering of the rear suspension on Dad's truck, which is a GMT 400, which ran from 88 to 98. So if you're looking to find instructions about how to lower the rear of your truck, you found the right video. And don't forget to check the description for additional information, but I'm talking too much, so why don't we just get to the action already in progress right now. Take it away, Eric. I must say that just throwing some black paint on that rusty frame did a lot. And I did go through with a wire brush and knock some of the rust off, but once again, this will eventually come back and, well, get a proper cleaning and painting and all that kind of stuff. But for now, I think this is great for our purposes. I'm starting on the left side because it's kind of a mess, mainly because of these parking brake cables. What I've determined is this cable came through in this direction, so it's got to go out from this direction. And if you come to the other side, you can see this part of the cable turns into this long threaded rod that goes to here. It's the parking brake cable adjustment. What I'm seeing is I've got to run this bolt all the way out so that cable can come all the way off and I can pull it through that way. I'm not sure if this cable is going to be used or not for my new rear brake setup. It just seems wise to save it, and if I can, I will. As far as this other cable, seems pretty straightforward, and just pull it back through that shackle. Also, when we go to put the new one on, the reason I believe they wanted us to drop the fuel tank was because in order to get to the fasteners on the back side here, fuel tank's kind of in the way. Now, I'm going to try to avoid that. I'm eventually going to drop the fuel tank because I'm going to be installing a new fuel pump. But for now, I just want to see if I can sneak past all this stuff and not have to worry about all that junk. And it's turning. I have a ratcheting wrench that I was hoping would work for this, but I don't have one in 16 millimeter, which is what this fastener seems to be. And you can see I'm just holding the other end with an adjustable wrench. I soaked it in penetrating oil. It's the only way it would have happened. Might get us this one. Yeah, there's one. We'll keep this around for nostalgia if nothing else. Taking that out brings the work down to us. But looking at this, I can move this out of the way a lot more easily because really I need to get to these 4 rivets here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that way I'll just deal with this whole thing off the truck. And I'm going to start up here on the hard ones. Here's the strategy for dealing with these rivets. I have this cutoff wheel. I'm going to take the cutoff wheel, come up here, and I'm going to try to cut like an X, or just try to cut the top of it to compromise it. Once I've done that, I can come back with my air chisel and knock the head off. And then once that's done, it should be done. But I want to weaken it first by coming up in here and cutting at a couple of different angles. So I'll probably do something like this and something like that. It always smells like hot dogs. Roughly like that. Next, I'm coming in with my very sharp air chisel, and I'm going to try to knock off the bits that are left. There it is, our prize. These need to be holes, not bumps. Let's see if I can knock them back through. Well, it worked before, right? That's what we wanted. After we get done cleaning, painting, this is what we want. Here it is. We're back, viewers, and I took the opportunity to paint all the leaf springs and all the other bits, and the differential and all that stuff is ready to go back in. I also painted the frame underneath the pieces that we've removed, so we're all ready to reassemble, finally, and that's what we're going to do right now. But there's one little thing I want to do before we get started. Eventually, I will need to drop the fuel tank in order to replace the fuel pump. I'm going to put a high-performance fuel pump in there. And I still may need to drop it today in order to get these fasteners in, but without this mount in the way, it's so much easier to access this tube going into the fuel tank. Same with this upper one here. So I'm going to take the opportunity to loosen this stuff up, make it ready for disassembly. Even if I don't do it today, that'll make for easier disassembly sometime in the future. I'm going to start with penetrating oil. I may need to replace these clamps. They've been on there for 30 some years, well, almost 30 years. Yeah, it started out good. This is why I'm glad to be doing this now, because my hand would be right up against this mount over here, along with the leaf spring being in the way. I can just reach up, it's out of my way right now. Oh, we're obviously gonna have to replace that clamp. Working under the truck and something just fell in my eye, I'm reminded that I should have my safety glasses on. Bad, Eric the car guy, bad. There we are. Okay, so it's loose. I'm just gonna put some silicone in here. Oh no, penetrating oil. Last minute change based on the fact I picked up the wrong can. Disconnecting out here means I have to deal with all this out here, but if I disconnect it here, I don't have to worry about that. Well, if you do decide to follow the instructions and drop the fuel tank, I would suggest getting this off first, because once again, that's right here. So I wouldn't be able to access any of this stuff. There we go. It's broken loose, that's good enough for me. I guarantee this little detour saved us time in the future. I'm gonna go get a new hose clamp for this. Well, it appears I've got to stock up on hose clamps, because I don't have one this size. Doesn't really matter, I won't be filling this up with fuel anytime soon. Mission accomplished by knocking that loose. Let's get this spring mount up on the frame. Here's the mount that goes on the driver's side. It came with a bunch of fasteners, so open those now. This is the 88 to 98 hanger. All of these are the same length. I'm assuming, yeah, there's 8. Then there's all these washers. There's 8 of these nuts, D's nuts, and these are locking nuts. You can tell by the weird end there. So 8 of those and 14, 16, so there's 16 of those. Apparently, they want one on either side. One on the bolt side, one on the nut side. Now, I don't think it matters which way you go through with these. In other words, do you come through from the back side like this and put the nut on this side, or do you go through like this? Now for this particular one, I'm going to come through the back side like that, and I'm doing that very specifically because there's not a whole lot of clearance between the fuel tank and the frame on this side, and to me it seems easier to fish this up through and then put a nut on it this way rather than trying to fit a nut up and spin it onto the end of this. Either way, you are somehow going to have to hold to one side and install this one on the other. This is the hanger for the parking brake cable, and I believe it's going to go on there just like that when you put the through bolt for the leaf spring in. If I can get these in here. Going to need a little bit of help getting it up in there. First I'm going to throw it on the floor, because it's always good to do that. It tempers the bolts. So with every project you should throw something on the floor, because you need to. There's some lines, stuff up on the back of this frame rail. Magnet. And this gives you a better indication of what I'm fighting against. A lot of stuff on that frame. So I'm just going to try to very carefully push that up through. Hopefully the magnet will hold it for long enough. Nope. So why don't I drop the fuel tank and put the fuel pump in it now? Because I don't have it yet. You know what I think the problem is? I think I made these bolts too freaking big. It's like we got to make these holes a little bit bigger. So they fit through here just fine, but it looks like I'm going to have to enlarge the holes in the frame. The weapon of choice, the angle drill. Seems like the easiest way to get in here. Another thing to do is take the bed off. You got options. But there is that stuff on the other side, so be careful. Not going to take much. Got the drill in our hands, let's do the other side. Where are you supposed to go through now? There's one. I think that was the hardest one though, and I kind of went for that one first. See if we can do it again. The other side should be a lot easier, but I did it. Okay, now I need to be very careful how I proceed next. So far I didn't have to remove the fuel tank. These are 3/4 in size. Now comes the fun part, because these are locking nuts, which means they're going to spin. The whole thing is going to spin once it starts getting the locking part on the threads. My only hope is this impact and putting enough tension on the whole thing and cross my fingers and hope they tighten up. Wish me luck, because I might be able to get a wrench or a socket up in there, but you saw the fuel lines and all that stuff on that frame rail. But if I succeed, you don't need to remove the fuel tank, you just need to fiddle with it for a while. And you get something up in there. Bolt heads are also 3/4. So ratchet head might be too thick to get up in there. This is actually a belt tensioning, part of my belt tensioning tool. It takes a 1/2 inch drive. I'm just gonna try to slip that up in there. If it were a deep well socket, it would work. I think it's on there. See, it's wiggling like it's on there. Stupid fuel line that's fighting me, but I might be on it. One more bullet. This one looks like deep well is too deep. Okay, this one's short, and I had to come up in through the side. Harbor Freight belt tensioning tool. that's what I ended up using, and it worked. You might be able to use a ratchet and get it up in there, but this, with this low profile, helped quite a bit. Sweet. Something that you might consider instead of trying to fight and do stuff like I did up against this frame rail, instead of dropping the fuel tank, you could actually loosen these attachments, like not all the way, but just loosen them enough so that you could move the fuel tank a little bit, and possibly that could give you the room that you need to get up in here. Now you still may need some special tools and things like that to get on these bolts and things when you go to tighten stuff, but that might help you get through this a little bit easier. Let's do the easy side. I hope it's easy. If not, well. Yeah, I'm calling this the easy side. These shocks are in my way. These are 1/2 inch, at least. Here they are. They might be something different. They might be 13, I don't know. Oh, my face. Don't stop the shock with your face, Eric. I just smacked myself right in the nose with that shock. And I knew it was coming loose. I like getting punched in the face every now and again just because, you know, from my MMA days. I'm going to stand back so this one doesn't hit me in the face. Oops. I told you I got hit in the face.
Middle of your forehead.
Yeah, getting beat up today. Yeah, glad I got my safety glasses on. At least I can still see. My new shocks. These are drop shocks, which means they have a shorter effective length than the stock shocks, which I'm going to unbox one and we'll just do a comparison to see the difference between the two. This is the one that was recommended for my application. I got these from Summit Racing, links in the description. I'll make it even easier for you. All these words, why? Slight oil drips, that's construction lube. None of that seems relevant to me. Let's check it out. Watch it grow. Watch it grow. Interesting. Are you ever going to stop? Ah, yeah, there it is. You can see the difference right down here. I'm disappointed that the new shocks did not come with new fasteners because you can clearly see that the old shocks had much thinner mounting points than the new ones do. So my fasteners may not be the correct length and I may need to pick some up. Anytime I install dampers, new dampers, I always do this. I always compress them a few times because, look, there's a lot of easy movement there. But it takes a few times, it seems, at least for me. I'm gonna do this to both of these before they stop doing that. Yeah, this one, same thing. Otherwise, you put them on and you go out for a ride and they're not quote unquote pumped up, and what happens is they just make a heck of a noise. As you saw, there's no damping, so gotta make sure that they're, no, maybe not. Maybe that's just how they are. Maybe they just have a little area up at the top there where they do that. Because, yeah, same thing on this. All right, well, at least I've cycled them a few times, you know, a couple of times. That's all I really feel the need for. Who's gonna win? Oh, this guy won. And the verdict is, oh, we're just fine. Plenty of room on those fasteners. Okay. Since we're here, I'm also gonna install the shackles on the freshly painted leaf springs. Some of you might ask why I didn't replace this bushing. It's brand new, that's why. So I see no need to take out a brand new bushing and put in those other bushings. I'm just fine with this the way it is. Now I'm gonna think about this as if it's in the vehicle. I'm gonna install the bolt this way. I'm not sure if that'll matter or not. Either way. they'll be ready. These were 21 millimeter. I'm gonna do a final tightening when it's up in the truck. Yeah, it's still got a little movement to it. If I haven't mentioned it already, the way these go on is with the open side facing the rear bumper. Not like that, like that. That's how the old ones came off anyway, so I'm just going by what was there. Ooh, a little too tight. That's better. One of the things they say in the instructions is to cut down the bump stop. This is the bump stop, so if the suspension bottoms out, it's the body, and they make this rubber thing here. Since we've lowered it, they recommend cutting it, an inch of it off, or cutting it in half or so. I don't want to cut it too much because I don't want it bottoming out against this metal. I'm going to cut it right about there. As I mentioned on this one, bolt's got to go through that also to hold the parking brake. I just noticed that on this side it's going to be similar to what we did to get these through, but hopefully not as difficult. But I'm going to start with this one. It's just barely poking through. Now I'll try to get the washer and the nut on there, because if I push it all the way through, I'll never get the nut up on there. Okay, washer. And then the nut. I don't want it too tight yet. Okay, I can still move it. Wow, that is up in there. Like I can see it already. Wow. That's cool looking. I mean, it definitely lowered it. It's definitely up inside that wheel well a lot more. Which, if I decide this is too much, I can come back and put it in that other hole on the rear mount, which will also change things, but that looks to me like a significant change in ride height for sure. Now that everything's in position, I will snug it all up. I'm hoping that parking brake cable eyelet is at the correct orientation. Hold on a minute there, Eric. Don't just go in and tighten things down with your impact. What I should have done is I should have left these things loose and then waited till it was on the ground and then torque these to 81 foot-pounds. The service manual states that that's the torque for these fasteners. That's all the leaf spring fasteners, both front and back. Remember this guy? Yeah, it's got to go back in. When you reinstall these landing pads on top of the axle tube, there's the hole in the middle, there's the locator peg pin, whatever, coming down. That's what you're aiming for. So that it's even up with the leaf spring. So I've got this, I've been moving it back so that it lines up with that leaf spring, so it's sort of parallel. Oop, that one went in. Attempt to do the same thing over here. All right. When you put this plate up in there, there's the profile. This is how you want it. So this is bottom. These U-bolts, when they're on there, go on like this. That's how they go on. And that bolt coming up through the leaf spring helps center things up. All right, everybody, chill out for a second. People that are yelling about the U-bolts, look what I got in my hand right here. This is a brand new set of U-bolts that's going to be going into this truck. Let's say that these were in here temporarily to set things up, but right here, here's the new ones. And it is recommended that you install new U-bolts, especially on an older truck like this. Although I didn't feel it was necessary, but I wanted to make it nice and pretty back here. Also, I'll be putting some power through this truck, and I want to make sure things hold together and don't come apart. Especially for Dad, when he's driving out on the power tour, that would be bad. I'd get in real trouble for that. I'd probably be grounded for the rest of my life. And here's the lower retainer. I don't think there's a front and back. Don't get your underwear in a bunch. I know common practice is to replace the U-bolts. I didn't think my U-bolts were that bad. We're just checking ride height and stuff now. I don't have them available now, but I can always go back and swap them out later. But for the purposes of this video and installing this axle and this lowering kit, we're just gonna leave it as it is for now and reuse the original bolts. As far as torque goes, on this C1500, I looked it up, and 80 foot-pounds, I believe, is the final torque. I'm gonna go to 50 and then 80. And the other thing that's important is when you tighten them, you gotta go in a crisscross pattern, so don't tighten one side down and then tighten the other side down. Tighten them down in a crisscross pattern like you're putting on a wheel. And I'm just gonna snug them up to start. Make sure that locating pin is still in line. I'm going to start at 50 and then go to 80. There we go. There's a 50. Just going to recheck them at 50. I'll take them up to 80. I already did that one. Duh. Starting out 50 again. I'm regretting putting these shocks on now. Now to 80. Anytime you do major suspension work like this, it's always a good idea after you get it done and you've driven it for like 100 miles or so to go back and recheck or retorque everything. I'm just gonna put the bolt through the dampers. I may end up moving these in a minute. So for now, I'm just mocking them up. This side had the, I don't know if you remember, but the bracket for the parking brake cable. And that'll do for now, because as I work on the differential, I may want to disconnect those shocks. I'm not sure yet. Whoa, hey. I'm going to put the drums on just so that the wheel's not bolted directly to the flange in there. We're just mocking things up right now. These wheels are coming right back off. They don't need the centers. My new lug nuts still haven't shown up yet. I called the company. Apparently the wheels got drop shipped from the manufacturer, but the lug nuts were coming from someplace else. They never shipped the lug nuts. So they're on their way. Honestly, I only need a couple of lug nuts because I'm not driving anywhere. Kind of hard to do without a drive shaft. Let's see what all our work added up to. Oh, not yet. I want to take the truck cover off, and that way I can see how it sits in the fender. Whoa. You know what? I like it. I like it right there. People talk of slamming it into the weeds, but honestly, to me, that's a nice look. Really nice look. I love it. I love it. And from what I'm seeing here, I'll get the drop spindles done, but this to me is a good height. I think this is a really nice look for this truck. Aside from the front end being up high, but we're fixing that. Oh yeah. Let's take some measurements. This is a good height for me. I mean, I just feel like instead of... Original ride height was 34.25 in the rear on both sides. Let's see what we got now. That's not a 4-inch drop. Looks more like 31.75. All right, this side looks like 31.5, weirdly enough. So we're a 1/4 inch off from one side to the other. If you find yourself in a similar situation where you're off from side to side, like I had a 1/4 inch difference between one side and the other, the instructions state to loosen all the fasteners that hold the leaf springs to the frame, put the wheels back on, drop it down on the ground, bounce it a little bit on the back, and then re-torque everything to spec, which is 81 foot-pounds, and they say that should bring everything back into line. So 2.5 inches is not 4 inches. It's just not. And, or 2 3/4, depending upon what side you look at. So it's not as advertised. I do like the look, and I'll wait until I get the spindles dropped in the front till I take a final judgment on the whole thing, but it's not exactly as advertised. My truck did not drop the advertised 4 inches. I'm not sad about that. I'm really happy with the way it sits, but if you install one of these kits and you're like 2.5 inches, that's not enough, I want the full 4. Here's something that you might try, and that's remove the unloader spring from the leaf spring stack in the back on both sides, and that will drop it down a little more. That unloader spring does not really hold up the rear of the suspension. What it does is it sort of helps control the leaf spring as it flexes from one side to the other, sort of like a slapper bar a little bit. So you will lose that control, but you will be able to drop it down farther if you want to. Just a suggestion. And that's a wrap on the lowering of the rear suspension on Dad's truck. So if you have a GMT 400, which ran from 88 to 98, one of these Chevy trucks, I hope this information was helpful to you. Now I have one very important note for you, and that is I did additional work besides lowering stuff back here. I rebuilt the differential, put a different gear in it, also did a rear disc brake conversion. So I had other work. Videos forthcoming on all of that, by the way. But when I went to reconnect the drive shaft is where I went into trouble, where it ran into trouble. The drive shaft was bottomed out inside of the transmission, and I couldn't get it to mate up with the yoke on the differential. I put in a call to McGaffey's and talked to a technician there who had extensive experience with installing these kits. The first thing that he told me is that he didn't disconnect drive shafts or anything when he was doing the kits. He just went in and installed the parts and away he went. However, I sent him pictures of what I was looking at here, and he says, well, with the arc of the rear leaf spring and all that, it kind of looks like just it's settled in a different position, and you just need to reconnect it and everything should be fine. Well, I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, but when I do, I'm going to put this all together and take it on a test drive and all that stuff. We'll cover that in a future video, but just know that if you take everything apart like I did, you may run into a problem reconnecting the drive shaft. Another thing involving this very thing is when you lower a vehicle like this, it could change what's the pinion angle, so the angle that differential sticks out, and what that could cause if that is incorrect is noise. I'm also concerned with, you know, the drive shaft being forced into the back of the transmission, but once again, I'm told everything should be fine. So I wanted to pass that information information along to you if you decide to drop a differential like I did and you have difficulty reconnecting the drive shaft, because I did a little search and I found somebody else ran into something similar and they were talking about shortening their drive shaft, which is expensive, and you have to take it to a specialty shop to do that. I hope I don't have to do that. I hope that when I put everything back together and get it all torqued to spec and all that stuff, that everything is all good. Additional information down in the description, including links to the parts that I use and everything else. Special thanks to Summit. So please check the description for that additional information that could possibly help you with those questions that you might have about what I did here today. If you have automotive questions not covered in this video, I ask that you head to EricTheCarGuy.com. That will also be linked in the description for you to find. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things that help me make a living. I really, really super appreciate that. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that, and I hope to see you next time.